Before we talk about leadership, maybe we should pay some attention to the docility of followership. So sometimes it's nice to blame the leaders. If the followers are mugu, then you'll be taken advantage of. And really, it's a failure. Our failure as a nation is a failure of the elites. Everyone you speak to right now is somewhat disenchanted. But that we're gathered here today is a sign that all hope is not lost. We may be an endangered species, but we also, like other endangered species, you can be brought back from the brink. There's nothing I would speak today on leadership that you don't know. I can only bring a focus to it. But you've heard it in different fora, you've heard it earlier on from earlier speakers, and so I probably will want to share some analogy. In 2006, I'm not a football buff, but in 2006, I stumbled on a football match between England and I believe Sweden. I'm not sure now, but I think it was Sweden. And there was a cup involved. And the captain of England was Beckham. But he was a non-playing captain because he had an ankle injury. So he sat on the bench. And from the bench, he controlled the playfield. He substituted players, he motivated players, he was running back and forth the lines. At the end of the game, England won. It was a lone goal. And you know, the cup was given, and there was a lineup. You know, the England jersey is white. There was a lineup of all the players. The jerseys had been dirtied, it was muddy, and you know. But he got the cup, Beckham got the cup, and he was spotless because he didn't play. He was spotless right in the middle, and he held the cup. And everyone to the left and right flank of him was just dirtied. There's a great lesson in that. The leader doesn't need to be the best. But the first thing is he must know himself and be comfortable with himself. He must know his strengths, he must know his weaknesses. We're human. We're not supermen. Even supermen have their failures and weaknesses. And when he's comfortable with himself, then he suffers no, what's the word? I'm trying to get a word now. It'll come. But that match showed something. There was a collective vision. England wanted to win that cup. The leader or the captain identified all those who could articulate that vision, regardless of whether they were friends or foes. The vision is a collective thing, it's a strength, it's what brought all of them together. He motivated them. He was not sentimental. If he thinks you're tiring, he'll replace you. It has nothing to do with earlier friendships or associations. We must achieve the set goal. And of course, at the end of the day, there's a prize. There's a prize for good leadership. The well-being of the citizenry is that prize. And at the end of the day, it's that leader who will be celebrated. So if you shortchange yourself and say, I'm not going to pick this man because Itudu Yanga, or I'm not going to pick this man because you see he's arrogant and all that, you're shortchanging yourself. And by the way, why shouldn't you be proud or do Yanga or arrogant if you know your stuff? Beware of people who play the fool. Beware of them. Now, there are a few leaders that we can talk about. We can talk about folks like, let's go far back as Bismarck. Otto von Bismarck was the gentleman who united what we now call modern Germany. He was strong, he was determined, he was the one that said, you know, in trying to unite the various tribes, the Aryan tribes that today form Germany, and the Saxons and all that, those who wouldn't agree with him, he said the issues of the day will not be solved by long speeches and resolutions, but by blood and iron. That was an error. Today, you can't reunite people by blood and iron. Superior intellect, arguments, and all that. You also have folks like Adolf Hitler, charismatic and all that. But coming to the present world, one of the most underrated leader of modern America was Ronald Reagan. Oh, he's a film star, he's this, he's that. But give Reagan some credit. He was comfortable with himself. He knew his strengths, he knew his weaknesses. He didn't claim to know it all. So what did he do? He picked the best to lead. And today, whether you're Democrat or Republican, you anchor after Ronald Reagan. He's one person that cuts across. So the leader doesn't have to be the smartest. In fact, when the leader becomes the smartest, there's a problem. He must be humble enough to seek those who are by far better than himself. Part of our problem is we assume once you're elected a leader, and you know the way we throw up leaders in the country for very skewed reasons. We assume that you're now, after that electoral process, you're now endowed with superior knowledge. You know it all. One of the failures of Jimmy Carter was micromanagement, trying to do it all. At the end of the day, a country like Nigeria, you can't have one person rule it. You can't. It's too large. There are too many sectors involved. So you must have a team of champions, each one championing a sector, right, towards a greater cause. People that you are confident, you know that in that sector, you don't match them. They are much better. They're superior to you. So you're entrusted to them. And where they succeed, the results are apparent. Where they fail, the results are apparent. You can't hide success. Neither can you hide failure. It will show. And talking about this, I want to take us back to, if you've listened to a lecture I've given in the past, you probably have heard this story. I used to be in the National Economic Intelligence Committee. And it was in the Abacha era. And it was a very, very interesting and instructive era. And on one occasion we had, and I'll mention names, we had General Adisa. He was Minister for Works, and he had insisted on importing bitumen for road construction. But the Kaduna refinery was shutting down because they had not evacuated bitumen from the tanks, and so they could not produce any further. But he said he didn't want that bitumen. He wanted the imported one. Yet the one in Kaduna was of far superior quality to that which he wanted to import. So Professor Sam Aloko, who was chairman of the committee, asked me to go investigate. And I came back. Kaduna had actually shut down at that point because they had to discharge what they had. And so Abacha called this meeting of all those who were involved in road construction. So you had General Buhari, who was chairman of PTF at the time. You had, of course, Adisa and NMPC folks. And you need to be graphic. There was Abacha in the middle. On his right was Dia, who was Chief of General Staff. On his left was Abdul Salam, who was Chief of Defense Staff. Then General Buhari. Then Bayero then Dan Etete, who was Minister for Petroleum. Buhari, who was, Bayero, who was GMD and NPC at the time. We, the folks from NAIC, National Economic Intelligence Committee, and Adisa to the other side. And we made our point that we needed to use what we were producing to keep that refinery going. And there was Adisa throwing tantrums, and he would say, Oga, if I know import this, I know we'll do any work. And the picture the world had of Abacha was this no-nonsense leader. But this was a very indulgent Abacha who would say, Adisa, cool down, cool down. Then we would go on making the technical arguments and why we need to utilize our business. Then Adisa will throw up his hands in exasperation and say, look, we got these people just they talk grammar. I no go do any work. And he'll say, Adisa, cool down, cool down. Then he gets to a point where he stops and says, he picks up a sheet of paper and looks and he says, Dan, that's Dan Etete. He says, Dan, you said the price of bitumen is XYZ, but what I'm seeing here is different. Or am I wrong? Abdul Salam looks at him and says, how can you be wrong, sir? You can't be wrong. Even if you're wrong, you're right. So by the time he now turns to Dia, he says, Dikbo. He doesn't say anything, he just says, Dikbo. He says, you're right, sir. Then he looks at Etete. He says, Dan. He says, I'm very sorry, sir.